Some may say Seattle really isn't a good football team right now. That's part of what we're going to break down today. Last year they started 5-0. Today they're 2-3 after last night's loss at home to the Los Angeles Rams. Peter King, Mike Florio for the next 2 hours here on this Friday edition of PFT Live, getting you ready for Week 5, but also plenty to discuss, Peter, coming out of last night's game. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Mike. Well, I just keep thinking about the Seattle Seahawks and thinking about what must Cam Chancellor think when he watches this team? What does Richard Sherman think and KJ Wright and all that? And KJ Wright wasn't on this team very long ago. But this is not your big brother's Seattle Seahawks. It's just can't play defense. They just
what
can't play
What
defense.
is Bobby Wagner thinking? He's still there.
Yeah,
he's looking around.
Yeah.
He's looking around.
Yeah.
What the hell happened? The uniforms are all the same. Where'd everybody go who could play defense? You know, Peter, I don't know that 5 weeks is deep enough into the season to justify projecting how things are going to end, but they are on pace to give up more yards than any team in the history of the NFL in a single season, especially with the 17th game. That's one of the records that will fall. But still, it's amazing that a Pete Carroll coach team, the Seattle Seahawks, would be in contention to have a historically bad defense.
And look, that stat, I saw that stat last night, and I said, just stop it with that. You know, stop it with saying they're going to give up the most yards ever. Well, no crap, Sherlock. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be the most this year because of the 17th game. Just tell me how many yards are they going to give up per game? That is the relevant and the only significant stat about this. But Mike, I just think when I look at this team, they almost got saved by that Carlos Dunlap batted pass last night. You know, late in the game, Matthew Stafford, he's just got to convert once to prevent Seattle from having a chance. And look, Geno Smith did fine, but once the Rams settled into a deep defense that they're not going to let anything happen in front of them, that was the end of it for Geno Smith. And look, how hard must it have been for him? He's thrown 2 passes in the last 16 years or, whatever the ridiculous stat was that he had last night. But, he did great when he came in and led him on the 98-yard drive. So he did a lot more than anybody could reasonably have expected of him. But, a defense with Jalen Ramsey in the back end and Aaron Donald in the front end and some pretty good players around him, they're not going to let that happen 3 times.
By the way, I have some additional information on the stat at which you scoffed. The Seahawks have given up 451 yards per game. The Saints of 2012, who set the record single season for most yards allowed, averaged 440 per game. So even with a 17th game,
that's the valid stat. That's the valid stat.
451 is a lot to give up per game
ridiculous.
For 5 games.
It's ridiculous. And even if, and look, last night the Seahawks, I thought in the first half they went toe-to-toe with them, played very, very well, and then they just got absolutely strafed in the second half. The one thing I like looking at that game last night from the Seattle standpoint is that they showed that they have good depth on offense, even when they're missing Chris Carson. They can be okay to good on offense and good enough. But that defense will be the ruination of them. It'll be the ruination of Ken Norton as defensive coordinator, I'm sure. And, who knows what ends up happening with Pete Carroll. But I do think that, Carroll probably has enough goodwill built up. But at some point, the Seahawks are going to have to figure out how they are going to rebuild this once proud defense.
Well, Peter, it also could be the final nail in the Russell Wilson coffin in Seattle. Not that that is the best. You know, you called me Mr. Metaphor last week. I could have come up with something better than that, because Russell Wilson very much alive, but not in Seattle. And we saw what happened last year. He's doing his damnedest to downplay it. It was funny last night on the pregame show. They had a sit-down with him and Aaron Andrews, and he downplays, and then they cut to Greg Olson, who said, nah, I was there. If he doesn't think everybody's all in to win championships, he's going to want to go somewhere else. Where Peter, if your defense is giving up 451 yards a game, it's hard for Russell Wilson to come to the conclusion that everyone's all in to win championships.
Yeah, and I think what's going to happen at the end of this year is going to be an interesting little choice for John Schneider and Pete Carroll. And that is, what do you do with a quarterback who may be extremely unhappy, but who also might be able to bring you a treasure trove of picks to rebuild your team? Now, I don't think anything will be as valuable to the Seahawks as Russell Wilson over the next 10 years. But we have seen quarterbacks who get unhappy enough that they talk themselves off of their team. It would have happened and still will happen at one point with Deshaun Watson, were it not for his myriad legal troubles off the field. But I do think that there will come a time of reckoning at the end of this year, whether Russell Wilson will be a big, happy member of the family or whether he won't.
2-3, last place in the NFC West, the ultra-competitive NFC West, where the Cardinals are 4-0 and the Rams are 4-1. We mentioned Russell Wilson. One of the reasons why the game got away from the Seahawks, although Geno Smith played very well, you got a better chance with Russell Wilson generally than you do with Geno Smith. Smith was playing because Russell Wilson banged his finger while encountering Aaron Donald. Now, Aaron Donald usually is injuring his own quarterback's hand in practice, so I guess it's good that, if you're going to injure a quarterback's hand, it not be your own. That finger was not quite pointing in the right direction. They popped it back in. He tried to come back for one series. He threw one pass. It was obvious he couldn't continue. Geno Smith entered the game after that point. And this happens. You're throwing a ball forward. It happens. You got to throw the ball. You got to have a follow-through. It's amazing it doesn't happen more often that your finger gets in the way of another player, and you see it gets that right there on the arm of Aaron Donald, and that knuckle is popped and the finger's pointing the wrong way. And here's Pete Carroll after the game talking about Russell Wilson's finger injury.
Because Russell wasn't able to finish the second half. He's got a badly sprained finger that we need to figure out. There's work to be done in assessing all of that. Russell's one of the great healers of all time, and he'll do whatever he can to get back as soon as absolutely possible.
He's never missed a start in his entire 10-year career. He's only missed one snap of significance. He had knee and ankle injuries back in 2016, and I remember him saying at the time they were coming to work on him at 3 a.m. at his house to get the knee and the ankle to the point where he could continue to play, and he never stopped. He never quit, and that's what will push him for the next 9 days to be ready to go Week 6 Sunday Night Football against the Steelers on NBC. He has the strongest will. And the problem is there's a point where will doesn't matter. If you can't grip the football, if you can't throw the football, if you have ligament damage, and we don't know at this point, but it's something that is going to hover over the NFL until next Sunday night, because it could be Geno Smith and not Russell Wilson when the Seahawks face the Steelers, and it will be a couple of desperate teams. Regardless of whether the Steelers win on Sunday against the Broncos, at best, they're 2-4. Seahawks are 2-4. It's an early season. Something's got to give game.
I remember in training camp this year going to Seattle, talking to Russell Wilson, and I said to him, so you have played 9 years in the NFL. Your team, since the day you were drafted, has played 160 games, including playoff games. You have started every one of those games. And I said to him, was there ever a time, ever one of those games where you came close to not playing? And after looking at me like I had 3 heads, he said, no, there was never a game that I didn't think I was going to play. And, Mike, I mean, do you think he won't play a week from Sunday against the Steelers? No.
I think the only way he won't play is if they leave him behind and otherwise shut down the airport and he can't drive to Pittsburgh in time. That's the only way he won't play. That's the only way. Because he'll yeah.
The one other thing about this, there are some people who view that as the ultimate badge of honor. And I was there every day for my team, every time for my team. And now, the one thing Pete Carroll knows is that, okay, it's not going to be a debacle if we have to play Geno Smith. Geno Smith is a very nice NFL backup right now. After last night, that's exactly what I would think. But I would also think that this is our season on the line in this week going to Pittsburgh. And we've got to win this game. And so I would expect Russell Wilson will play.
Well, and here's the reality. We don't know, and we probably won't know the extent of the damage. We'll hear bits and pieces. We'll hear what they want us to know. They will keep close to the vest what's going on with that finger. But here's the scale, and every team has to do it. When the starter is anything below 100%, how far below 100 with the starter are you willing to tolerate versus a 100% backup? And it depends on who your backup is and what your backup can do. And like the Colts a few weeks ago, who are looking for every reason possible to never put Jacob Eason on the field, they will take a 70% Carson Wentz, right? But if you got a 70% Russell Wilson, if you got a guy who can't grip and throw the football, the best deep ball thrower in the NFL, not able to throw the ball like he usually does, that's when you say, Russ, we love you. But there's a point where your badge of honor becomes a taint of selfishness that you want to be able to say, I never missed a game. There's a point where you have to say, no, it's better for the team if the other guy plays. And it will drive him crazy. Peter, I heard audible chants of Geno, non-sarcastic chants of Geno, multiple times last night. Hey, this is Russell Wilson's team. Don't get close to my throne. This is my team. I'm the guy. And he's not going to want to give Geno Smith a chance for those fans to welcome him back as the conquering hero who went to Pittsburgh and won. And that's the balance. Helping your team win versus helping yourself continue to build your legacy. And it all comes down to whether or not he can grip and throw the football. It's the ultimate test. You know, hamstring, hey, I'm good. Ankle, yeah, I can do it. I'll make it. I can gut through it. If you just physically can't throw the football because of your injured finger, what can you really do?
Yeah, and I think the one thing that you saw at last night's game is I'm sure that, you know, Pete Carroll and Shane Waldron are going to get together when the despair emanating from last night's game ebbs, and they can start to think about next week, and they can say, hey, listen, the one thing we do know right now is that it's not going to be an abject disaster if Geno Smith has to play in that game. You know, the other part of it, Mike, you know that Geno Smith has always been the guy who, like so many other Jets quarterbacks over the years, you know, from Mark Sanchez to Sam Darnold and everybody in between and some before them, all feel like they got swallowed up by the poisonous atmosphere that has been the New York Jets. So Geno Smith, I'm sure, would tell you that, look, I never had a chance to really be a good long-term player for a normal NFL franchise. And look, everybody can make whatever judgment they would want to make about, well, that's his fault, whose fault. Doesn't matter. You know, I think Geno Smith deep down feels like I never had a really fair shot at being a quarterback in the NFL. And I think that's why he would relish the chance to have a couple of games this year to sort of burnish his career and to try to make a little bit of a comeback to say at the very least that maybe he could be like a Case Keenum type player, someone who a team would trust to be a backup who, if he had to play, they won't be worried about him.
Well, but he has that in Seattle. The only thing is he's behind a guy who always plays. But we see why. We see why last night he's still in Seattle. Because, Peter, I'm not going to shed tears for this guy. He's still earning an NFL paycheck. And he did have a chance in New York. And then wasn't there a time when it was time for him to play and he wasn't ready to play or something like that? Remember the issue with his phone and he missed some meal? There was something. I'm going to have to look that up. But that was on him. That was on him. But he still continues to get employed year in and year out. And now some would think and say that he's the backup to Russell Wilson because he's completely non-threatening and they don't want to have a backup quarterback in Seattle that's going to push Russell Wilson. It's always compete except at the quarterback position where Russell Wilson is the unquestioned guy. But he's still, 10 years later, he's still in the NFL. And a lot of guys who got drafted back in 2013 are long gone. So, he got his chance, and he may get it 9 days from now, and we'll see how he performs when a defense has a full week to get ready for him.
And that's fair enough. All I'm saying is that I think Geno Smith, all the years now, or whatever it's been, 3 years, whatever, that he has been in Seattle, you look at him and he has to feel like if I really had a chance, with a good NFL franchise, who knows what could have happened. And that, to me, is what last night was for Geno Smith. It was saying, I can play in this game, and I can play on a winning franchise and play well. Now, he had the bizarre little, as you're going to see here in a minute, he had the bizarre little interception, that in many ways it was the classic, it wasn't his fault. But it is what it is. I just think, Mike, that right now, Geno Smith, I think, would relish an opportunity to have a real chance with a representative team, and he may get that in 9 days.
And look, I agree with you. It was awesome last night when he had a chance to take the team down the field, and here's that fateful play. Tyler Lockett trips over his own feet. It happens, and the interception ends the game. We got one play. I was excited. 2:09 left, 84 yards, down 6. Let's do this thing. And Tyler Lockett fell. And as Troy Aikman said,
by the way, I don't think Tyler Lockett tripped over his own feet. Tyler Lockett got pushed and fell down. That's the way I saw that play, and I heard what they said on the game broadcast of it. That certainly didn't look like a guy getting tripped up by the turf monster. It looked like a guy who got shoved and then fell. But whatever. It was a fluky play. The interception happened. Life goes on. But I would love to have seen what happened if that contact didn't happen with Tyler Lockett, because I think he would have caught the ball. Now watch this. He's coming across. That's not falling over his own feet. There was contact made, and he fell down from that contact, not because his feet tripped on the turf. There it is.
I don't know. I mean, if he fell down because of that contact, it's going to cause me to reassess all of the soccer flops that I see. I don't think that contact made him fall down. I don't know if there was contact with the leg as he ran by.
But what made him fall down? He got contacted by number 4 there.
Right, but you're not going to fall down. If that's going to make him fall down, he has no business being in the NFL.
Mike, all I know is this. I've seen pass interference called on plays that had half the amount of contact of that. And I'm not even saying that should definitely have been pass interference. I think it should have been. He fell because of the contact on that play, no matter how light you might think it was. He didn't fall because he tripped over his own feet.
It's possible that he was interfered with up high, and he did trip over his own feet low, and it's just a coincidence that the two things happened. I look at that and I say, that's a guy that just caught his feet caught, and maybe he got a leg that we can't see, that I can't discern, that they hit legs as he went by. the defensive back, but I don't know. Regardless, Geno Smith had a golden opportunity, and it wasn't his fault. The interception is not on him, although it is on him. It goes in the record books as his interception. I was ready for an exciting finish where he would take the team down the field. He'd already driven 98 yards for a touchdown. What's 84? And that could have been one hell of a night.
Or whatever it is.
Yeah, it was 84. He's from his own 16. And that would have been great. So, now, I don't know that Russell Wilson would have viewed it as great because they'd have been going nuts. They would have had another beast quake. It would have been a Geno quake. And by the way, I had forgotten this. Geno Smith is the answer to a New York trivia question that deals with his period of time between Jets and Seahawks. He is the guy who got the start when Eli Manning got benched by Ben McAdoo.
Yeah, he did.
And he didn't do much with it. And he got rebenched.
He got rebenched. But look, Geno Smith is going to be a little NFL Films biopic one day. He's had an interesting career. And I just think there are a bunch of guys like Geno Smith who always end up thinking to themselves after their career, whether they admit it or not, I was a victim of circumstances.
Well, and I think that happens to a lot of guys. Where you get drafted as a quarterback is a huge circumstance. Where you go to start your career. And you get in the right place with the right coaching staff, the right front office, the right teammates, the right ownership, you're going to be in a much better position than if you end up with one of the dysfunctional teams. Case in point, the quarterback that we talked about all of last week, Tom Brady. He lands anywhere else as a sixth-round pick. Who knows what he becomes? Matthew Stafford landed in Detroit as the first overall pick, and we saw what that did to him for 12 years. I'm still amazed he was able to tolerate it for 12 years. He had a finger injury last night, not nearly as bad as Russell Wilson's, where the finger was pointing the wrong way. They wrapped it. He played. He was fine. He says he popped the finger back in during the game, and he was good to go. 365 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Now, I don't know that we need to be nearly as concerned about him being able to play next week as Russell Wilson, but still, we've seen a cocktail of injuries over the years for Matthew Stafford, and things that we knew about, things we didn't know about. He always finds a way to fight through it as much as he possibly can and play. But the fact that he was able to finish last night and generate 365 tells me this one isn't nearly as big of a concern, Peter.
I mean, he played too well in the second half to think that it'll be a concern. And look, Matthew Stafford, I think now looks at the team he has and says, I am never missing for a start for these guys. Look at who I have to work with. Look at these guys who I have to work with. And I thought it was really interesting on the telecast last night. I thought it was a situation where thou doth protest too much, of saying what a wonderful guy Robert Woods is, and he would never complain about playing time. And then after the game, I don't know if you saw it, but Woods admitted that he went to Sean McVay and said, how can I be more involved in the offense? So to me,
we got it.
I just kept thinking to myself last night that they're saying this way too much, and now there's got to be something to it.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.